Edmonds, who will be taking over from me as Labor's finance spokesperson. Barb is an incredible person, someone with deep Labor values, great community connections, and a terrific mind for numbers as well. All of the qualifications that I think are needed to make her a great finance spokesperson. She will be Labor's first ever female finance spokesperson in our entire history, as well as our first Pacifica finance spokesperson. So Barb is a great person. I'm looking forward over the next month or so to working with her. So onto the logistics part of this press conference. I'll step back from today, so Barb takes over in that role from today, but I will stay around until towards the end of March, just to fulfil commitments I've made about the transition and what I can do to help in that period of time. Then I'm going to take a little bit of a break because it's been a big 15 years, and I'll take up the appointment at the University of Otago from the 1st of July.
Right, Robertson, why did you decide that now was the right time to leave?
Look, I think it's been clear for everybody that since the election I've been revisiting my future. 15 years is a decent stretch here. I wanted to make sure I helped the Labor team get itself up and running, and then this opportunity came along, and I think everybody here knows about my connections with Otago and Dunedin and with the University of Otago, and once I started looking at that opportunity, that dictated the timing.
You said that leaving Chris Hipkins, or telling Chris Hipkins rather, was one of the hardest parts of this decision. Are you leaving him vulnerable? Is that your concern?
Not at all. I think this is an incredibly strong Labor team that's focusing on the issues that really matter, that's rebuilding strongly. The reason it was hard is Chris is my mate. And, I've been in politics with him, before 2008 when we came in here. As he said this morning to the caucus, I was on his interview panel 21 years ago when he got the job as Trevor Mallard's advisor. It's hard in these places because you build up such strong friendships and bonds. But I've got absolute confidence in Chippy and Carmel.
When you were looking to the future, was it a consideration of yours that it's likely that you were going to have to spend a significant amount of time in opposition?
Yeah, there's a big supposition in that question. I mean, it could be 3 years, it could be longer. For me, it was very much about where I am personally after 15 years. I gave every single inch of myself to the jobs that I've had in Parliament, and arguably maybe a little bit more than that in the last 6 years particularly. And so I knew that I didn't have it in me to go much further, but it's not about the length of time in opposition. That will be a matter for the Labour caucus to get on the job and on with the job for.
And looking back at particularly your time as a minister and that time during the COVID pandemic, do you have any regrets from that time, and what is kind of your proudest moment?
The thing I'm the proudest of is the role I played in getting New Zealand economically through COVID. The health challenge of COVID was enormous, and people like Jacinda Ardern and Ashley Bloomfield and so on have rightly been credited with that. I knew my job was to support them in that, but it was to get through economically. And I remember the day when a briefing came over from Treasury and it said unemployment was going to go over 10%. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to let that happen. And so what I'm proud of is that we saved lives, but we also saved livelihoods. And the work that we did, getting the wage subsidy out, getting those supports through, kept unemployment low. And, everyone had their different jobs during COVID, but that was my job. And I'm very proud that I did that. About that specific period of time, no. And the reason I say that is that the choices and decisions we made were made in the moment. Anyone can look back with 20/20 hindsight and say, you should have done this, you should have done that. What I'm proud of is that we made our decisions based on our values, and we made our decisions and brought New Zealanders with us. Now, to preempt perhaps another question, the hardest and toughest time I've had in politics was that occupation out there. And that, for lots of different reasons, but the biggest one of them being that I was the MP for Wellington Central, and the people of this community found that incredibly hard. I found that incredibly hard personally.
Could you just let us know a little bit more about the timing here? I mean, wouldn't it have been better for you to wait until after the budget, maybe do your bit of a swan song there? You're dropping Barbara in the deep end a little bit, aren't you?
In the end, because of the position that I'm going to, it was important for the university to be able to make that decision and give some certainty moving forward. I don't think I'm dropping anybody in it. Barb's an enormously capable person, and she's going to be fantastic. And really, in the end, whenever you go, someone has to take over. And there's a transition here. I'm here for about another month supporting that transition. But you know, politics is much bigger than any one person, and nobody is indispensable.
And why is it that you think that she's up to it? What makes a good quality of a finance spokesperson?
I mentioned at the start, I can list off many things, but three come to the top of my mind. Barb can add up. She knows numbers. She's a tax lawyer. She used to work for Inland Revenue. Secondly, she is deeply rooted in her communities. Her upbringing and the mana electorate that she represents are the very people who governments need to look out for. And thirdly, Barb has got a real ability to look through the crap. And I think she is somebody who's going to be able to really take it to the government. Yes.
You answered Gina's question before about regrets, but you talked about the Parliament process being hard. Is that a way of you saying that actually what happened out there were regrets of the way that rolled out?
No, not particularly, Joe, no. I just mentioned that because it was the hardest time I had as a politician. Again, all of that comes down to that hindsight thing, and I'm sure in the future I'll have a bit more opportunity to reflect around that, but no, that's not what I mean.
You also made the comment about the Labour Party being bigger than one person. But you stuck around after the election because you were quite frank about the fact that this was an experienced opposition caucus and you needed to transition with that. So are they ready?
I believe they are, and they're showing that. I mean, look at the work that Herald has been doing, Ginny Anderson's been doing over the last little while. We've got an exceptionally talented team here, and Barbara's one part of that team. Whenever I left, there'd be a transition to a new finance spokesperson. I've been the Labour Party's finance spokesperson for almost 10 years. And so whenever it happened, it was going to be a challenge, but I believe Barb and the team are ready for it. Luke.
What's your biggest bit of unfinished business, or the thing that you would have really liked to have got done but you didn't manage to?
This is going to sound slightly boring and technical, but COVID really got in the way of the full rollout of the wellbeing approach. And there was a lot more that I wanted to do there. We got some of it in with the multi-year funding and the clusters and so on, but embedding that fully so that really is the way that governments decide what they're going to do with their budgets, how we measure our success, that got interrupted severely by COVID. My argument would be we adopted a wellbeing approach in COVID, but the actual mechanics of it. So that's the bit, but it's in law, and I really hope that all governments carry on with it.
And you're going home. You're going home, and you've got the most important job in the city.
I'm sure there'll be people in the city who might argue against that, but yep.
How does that feel coming full circle?
It feels really good. This is a huge day of mixed emotions for me. I'm incredibly sad about leaving the people that I work with here and something that's been a big part of my life for 20 years. But I'm super excited about going home, about going to an institution that gave me an incredible start. It made me for my career, and the opportunity to be able to go back there and help do that for whole new generations of students is just huge.
Got any big plans for Otago?
Oh, I've got plenty, but we'll talk about those another day.
Just on Luke's question there, in terms of unfinished business, you did run for the leadership of the Labour Party at one point, and that was a goal of yours. Are you sad that you never got to fulfil that?
At the time, I was very sad that I didn't get to do it. I ran twice, stood right here in this, actually no, it probably can't have been this. Yeah, it was this room, wasn't it? And yeah, at the time I wanted the job. That's why I put myself forward for it. But as is very much on the record, once I hadn't succeeded the second time, I actually did put that out of my mind and focused on what I could do. And I'm very proud of what I did do and the role that I played, particularly in supporting Jacinda while she was Prime Minister, is, for me, a really big achievement. So I was sad at the time, but I got over it.
You were arrested at Otago.
But not charged, Jenna. Very important distinction. Yeah, look, I mean, it's 31 years since I was the student president, and those were very challenging times for students. You know, upfront fees had arrived for the first time and allowances had been cut. And, you know, I have always defended the right to peaceful protest, and I continue to defend that. Mikey.
Why did you get?
There was a few protests at Otago in the early 1990s that were pretty rowdy. I'm now regretting answering that question, Mikey, because it's all in the TVNZ archives.
Did you talk to Jacinda Ardern as you were making the decision?
I did, yeah. I mean, Jacinda's a close friend of mine, as you all know, and I've been talking to her a little bit over the last few months, and she sent me a very nice text just before.
What was her advice for you?
Just to do what felt right for me.
She shared quite a nice anecdote on her Instagram about you, during your selection process, you saying that you wouldn't be ranked before her. What did you have?
Yeah, it's a long time ago now, but it did happen. I was running in the Wellington Central seat, and I really felt that was my job, was to win the Wellington Central seat. I also really wanted Jacinda to get into Parliament. She was ranked a bit lower. She was only running as a list candidate and was running in the Waikato electorate, which she wasn't going to be able to win. And I really wanted to make sure she got in.
That's pretty self-sacrificial.
Your words.
You're obviously exiting politics. How do you leave politics? What is the state of it? Are you concerned about just shimmy on off? Are you concerned about the environment it is at the moment, whether people would actually want to come into this place? How do you feel about all that?
I get a lot of people who come and ask me about going into politics, and I still tell them it's worth it, but I also put a health warning with it. It's not the role that I came into in 2008, and it's not the role that I observed when I came back to work here in 2001. And there's loads of reasons for that, and there'll be other opportunities to go into lots of detail about that. But it still matters what happens in this place, and we still need good people to put their hands up on all sides of politics to come here, because the decisions that are made here affect everybody's life every day. And so, despite the fact that I do think it's a more hostile, toxic, to use the modern phrase, environment, it's still worth people coming here. And obviously everyone's got a responsibility to make it as healthier an environment as we can.
Are you going to speak more to that in your valedictory?
In all likelihood. I haven't written it yet, but in all likelihood.
Your critics will point at your record and say under your tenure, increased government debt, increased government spending, the rate between the haves and the have-nots in the home ownership space is higher than ever. What would be your response to that? They say, and this is their words, that you're the worst finance minister in New Zealand's history.
Look, I'm proud of what we did as a government, and I'm proud of what we achieved. And I, in terms of, benchmarks for that, a lot of things get said in politics. The international ratings agencies have consistently come to New Zealand while I've been the finance minister and given us a tick of approval. And in fact, our rating increased when other countries were being held back or being decreased. So everyone will have their views, Jason. It's one of the things about being in politics, is that people have their views. I'm proud of what we did.
And you were up against
Labour has a self-described blank policy slate now, and they're building a whole new platform to take into future elections. Will you be involved in that process at all? Or just
No, I won't.
How much did it hurt when your wealth tax got through?
Look, in politics, lots of ideas come up, and I said at the time that I believe in what the Labour Party stands for. I believe in the principles of the party, in the importance of a social democratic voice in politics. Not every idea you have is going to get through. I'm not going to get into the details of tax policies today because, as I've just said, that's now for somebody else to resolve. But it is really important to me that the social democratic voice has been heard, and I'm very proud of the things we did do. Of course, there will be things we didn't get to do.
And the wealth tax the way forward for Labour?
It's just not for me to comment on.
What's your
Thomas.
advice to Chris
Other
Hipkins?
departing MPs have just, in the valedictories before have mentioned a policy or something they just didn't get around to doing because it is, as you say, a very busy job. Is there something that you'd like to bequeath to sort of our political discussion just to say, hey, look, we should think about doing this.
Let's not spoil the valedictory speech, Thomas. Mark.
The first finance minister had put a serious amount of money towards climate change emissions reductions. Do you, in the vein of the regrets questions or the unfinished business questions, do you feel like you did everything you could have done? When you look back and however many
Well, there's absolutely no doubt that climate action is unfinished business. There's a huge amount of work for the government and future governments to keep doing in that space. But you've alluded to what we did do, and I can come back to this in the valedictory speech. But I am proud of what we did in the climate space. I really enjoyed working with James Shaw. He's also a friend that I've made in politics, and I think we took really important first and necessary steps. But obviously, the answer to your question is there's a huge amount more to do.
If you rewind to 2020 and like March, April, that time, it was a crazy time. And can you just talk us through how you dealt with the stress of making the decisions you did, which have gone on to impact New Zealand, I think probably for decades to the future?
Look, as I said before, we went into that with no playbook. We were operating on values, we were operating on instinct, we were operating on the lessons we could learn from what had happened in other countries as they faced it. And so we had to take those decisions without the information you would normally take. I don't regret saving lives and livelihoods. Of course, there are things that happen, and Janae, you've written about them a lot along the way, but we had to take those decisions in the best interests of New Zealanders with the best will at the time, and that's what we did do.
What mahi are you most proud of in regards, in terms of outcomes from all?
A lot. I mean, the things that immediately come to my mind were things that, we funded when they hadn't been funded before. So that's things like Matatini, creating Matariki, the New Zealand Histories curriculum in school, the things that I think are going to have big long-term importance in New Zealand. But I'm also proud of the budgets that we put together that gave significant additional resource in areas like Māori health, education and housing. There are many things I'm going to miss about being here. One of them is Willie Jackson knocking on my door.
What is your biggest concern with regards to National and the coalition government?
Look, I don't want to get into a big conversation about that today. I'd rather talk about what my hopes are for New Zealand, and my hopes for New Zealand remain that this is a country where, wherever you grow up, I grew up in South Dunedin, that you can do and achieve your very, very best, and that the government is there to support you to do that. And I think all governments go in with a great will to do this, with very different ideas about how to get there. But it is really important to me that we have that focus on the future, and that's why the role that I'm going to is one that I'm really excited about, because it gives me that chance again.
Finally, what's your advice to Chris Hipkins upon your exit?
I'm not going to give Chris any advice other than to wish him all the best.
What is Grant Robertson's legacy?
Well, that will be what you will put on the news tonight, Jenna, and you guys will make your own minds up about that. From my perspective, I'm proud to have been part of a government that got us through COVID with a focus on saving lives and livelihoods, that refocused the way we do our budgets on our people and on the well-being of our environment, and as somebody, I hope, who people saw as a politician who they could approach.
And we've spoken a lot about COVID today. What was the first moment in 2020 where you realised, shit, this is quite serious?
I think I've talked about this before actually, but I have a friend, a guy named Rodney Jones, who's an economist, and I remember him ringing me and talking to me about what was happening in China, and I remember thinking, this is very, very big.
Grant, families have to deal with a lot. What did Alf say to you when you said this was it, you're done, you're out?
Oh, we've been, as you can imagine, discussing this for a long time. I do want to acknowledge Alf and my wider family and friends who've just been extraordinarily supportive over a really long period of time. I think Alf's as excited as I am about some new prospects.
Parliamentary rugby,
Just one more.
Or, things at Parliament but outside of the day-to-day work that you might reflect on?
I mean, I guess it's a tiny bit of a cliche, but there are people across politics that you get to know and who surprise you with what you might have in common, and you know, there are huge differences of opinion, and everybody knows that I've always enjoyed the robust bits of politics, but equally I hope I've also understood that people are people, and ultimately for me it's about the people you meet along the way.
Favourite Labour leader? Least favourite?
Did the timing of this announcement have anything to do with next week's test match?
No, but I'll see you anyway.
What about last night's poll?
Is your favourite restriction being Albert?
Kia ora everybody. I'd like to begin today by taking a moment to acknowledge my very good friend and colleague Grant Robertson and congratulate him on his appointment as Vice-Chancellor of Otago University. I know that he will be an outstanding leader for Otago University and they are very lucky to have him. Grant led New Zealand's finance portfolio through a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic, some of the most challenging circumstances any finance minister could have to lead the country through, and he did that with distinction. The wage subsidy kept Kiwis in work, the support provided to businesses kept businesses afloat, the opportunity to invest in our infrastructure and upgrade parts of New Zealand that had long been neglected, I think will be a lasting legacy from his time as Minister of Finance. And whatever the political rhetoric, New Zealand's debt levels are low relative to many other countries around the world. I think Grant's track record as a Minister of Finance was exemplary. But more than that, he has been an incredible asset to the New Zealand Labour Party. He has served in a whole variety of different roles, including as the party's deputy leader, as deputy prime minister for the country, and in a variety of other roles, perhaps his career highlight being that as Minister for Sport, a portfolio that I know he was incredibly passionate about. Grant leaves with our very, very best wishes. He has made a huge contribution to New Zealand. I'm also excited to announce that Barbara Edmonds will be taking over the finance portfolio from Grant. Barb has a very impressive track record in the economic arena. She is a tax expert, but more than that, I know that Barb is someone who understands that the economy fundamentally is about people and about making sure that the economy is working for people. Barb has held a variety of roles as a minister in the last government and also has worked behind the scenes as a ministerial advisor in a number of key economic portfolios. She has an epic combination of smarts and being personable, being a hard worker. She forms fantastic relationships, and I think that she will excel in the role as our finance spokesperson, and I believe that she will make an outstanding finance minister in the future as well. I've asked Ginny Anderson to pick up the portfolio of Treaty of Waitangi negotiations, whilst Penny Henare will pick up the Māori Crown Relations portfolios. They were portfolios previously held by Kelvin Davis. Shannon Halbert will be picking up the Auckland Issues portfolio and a newly created Rainbow Issues portfolio, which I announced over the weekend. Tracy McClellan, who has rejoined the caucus, will be picking up corrections and an associate role in health. When Glenn Bennett rejoins the team when Grant Robertson leaves, he will pick up the role as our economic development spokesperson and have an associate energy role. Land information and racing will be picked up by Damien O'Connor and Tange Utakiri respectively. We've got a government that at the moment is searching around for people to blame for their own misfortunes. They went into the election campaign with a policy platform that was unaffordable, with numbers that didn't add up. No amount of spin can hide from that. The lineup that I have announced today will be holding them to account for the promises that they made to New Zealanders during the election campaign, and for the fact that they don't actually have a vision or a plan to lead New Zealand forward. Happy to open up for questions.
Who of the three of you, Jacinda and Grant, had gone now? Grant Robertson said that it was one of the hardest things that he had to do was tell his mate he was leaving. Are you feeling quite emotional?
That was a really mean way to start. It is an emotional day. It won't come as a surprise to any of you that Jacinda and Grant have been two of my best friends, not just at work, but in my life. And so having had them both recently depart has not been easy. But I also have known for some time that this was likely to happen. And, everybody at some point wants to move on with their life, and that's fine. And I know that, Grant is taking up an amazing career opportunity for him. And I think everybody in this place has to make a judgment whether they still have more fight left in them or whether they're ready to move on to something else. And Grant, I think, will continue to fight for a fair in New Zealand, regardless of what job he holds, because that's in his DNA, it's who he is. But yes, I will miss him.
Can you go on without them?
What was that?
Can you go on without them? How hard will this be?
Oh, I'm a pretty resilient person. Now, look, I'll miss them on a personal level. But I've been around this place long enough to know that nobody's here forever. Everybody comes and goes, and people who have been hugely dominant figures in the New Zealand political landscape, there's a few of them on the walls around us, eventually leave. And, We've got a job to do. I've still got plenty of fight left in me. I'm still feeling very energised about the job that I've got ahead.
You've appointed a tax expert as your finance spokesperson. What should we read into that about Labour's upcoming tax policy?
What you can read into it is that I've appointed somebody who has a lot of expertise about the economy, has a particular speciality in tax, but as I've indicated, also understands that the economy fundamentally is about people. So I wouldn't read anything specific about tax into that.
Can we just ask
Barbara, fire away.
Question? What is your personal view on whether New Zealand needs a wealth tax?
I'm not going to go into that today. Our party has a process, our caucus will have a process. What I can commit to is that going into the 2026 election, we will have a well-costed plan that aligns with our Labour values.
What does Barbara Edmonds think about a wealth tax?
Barbara Edmonds thinks that she needs to support her team to make those decisions and to provide the information for it.
Barbara, you've been talked up by your colleagues. Grant Robertson said you had a terrific mind for numbers. So if you'll indulge me, what's your
here we go. 4.7 annually.
What is the OCR?
5.5.
Unemployment?
Just gone up 4%.
And what was the GDP growth in the September quarter?
I'm not going to go, I think it's 1.3, but again, I've been in this role for an hour, so I'm just going to get my feet into it.
I think that was a really good start. So,
It was a great start. So
if I can answer, my parents came off a plane from Auckland Airport from Samoa in 1976 to give their kids a better life. 10 years later, my father was a widower at the age of 40 with 4 children under the ages of 11. I became a tax lawyer, but I was brought up in a benefit-dependent household. Families need support, and for me, as Chris has said, economics, finance, numbers, it all drills down to people.
And so is that going to be your approach when you take on Nicola Willis? Is it sort of going to be more of a personal, well, not that former Minister Robertson wasn't personal, but are you going to have more of a people approach than a numbers approach?
Nicola is a consummate politician. My job will be to hold her decisions and her words to account.
Will you be the conscience when it comes to numbers?
I think every day you walk into these doors, I ask myself why I'm here. And the reason why I came here was to provide a voice for those who are most vulnerable. So I ask myself that every day, and that's what fuels me. And the things that I'm seeing from the government currently are absolutely disappointing for me because it will impact on our most vulnerable people. In the same way, I've had a tax career. I've been able to build relationships across business, unions, sectors, different sectors that you may not necessarily think a Labour politician would. So for me, it's to be able to, in the next couple of years, develop and strengthen those relationships.
And I know you don't want to talk about the wealth tax, but that's a huge issue for voters, the public. It was kind of like a big kind of deciding factor for Labour at the election. What can you say in regards to a wealth tax or taxing those who perhaps need to be paying more?
I think it comes down to fairness ultimately for Kiwis. They want to make sure that if I'm paying, I'm being taxed $1, that someone else that might derive income from other means is going to be taxed at that same dollar as well. But at the same time, we need to go into the 2026 election with a really clear plan that aligns with our Labour values. So I'm not going to go into it today. We need to have those discussions as a caucus and as a party.
Is our tax system unfair? Is our tax system unfair at the moment?
Depends on who you ask.
Do you, I'm asking you, so that's what I'm asking. Is our tax system
And again, it really goes down to the rules are the way the rules are. People will do things the way that they do in relation to their tax affairs. But you've got to ask the question, which is, why should a person who's taxed $1 in a particular way because they earn it in a certain way, and another person that earns it another way, you've got to make sure there's fairness around that.
Robertson said that you were the first woman ever to hold a role as Labour's finance spokesperson, and also the first person of Pacific descent. I saw you smiling quite hard behind.
I was just thinking, oh yeah, thanks for that.
What does that mean to you?
Again, you know, you walk through these doors and you carry a community with you. I've been really fortunate. I carry the community of Mana, and that's why they elected me to be their MP. It is obviously a big responsibility, but I have, you know, general respect for all politicians across any colour, that they come in here hoping to make an impact. And so for me, I just go back to the people that I serve.
What sorts of discussions will we be having with Grant before he leaves? Like, how much will you be wanting to seek his counsel, but also how much will you be wanting to put your own stamp on the role?
Grant's advice to me was do it your way, and so that's what I intend to do. And I think having the ability to have Grant there to just help me transition into the role is just something that I think anybody going into a new role would really appreciate.
Were you expecting this announcement to happen today?
I was expecting something, but at the same time, you know, the leader can change his mind up to the last minute.
So not today.
Yeah, not today.
Right, so
You know, you just can never, you know, you've got to make sure.
Just wondering what prompted the last minute change in announcement.
Can I just say that you were all very mean to me this morning, and I'm still getting over it. But Grant Robertson has obviously been going through a process with Otago University, and it wasn't fair for me to be making public comment about that until that process was completed. And as he will have outlined for you, that process has only just been completed.
Did you tell everyone before?
What's that?
You told everyone before.
Yeah, well, I wasn't going to announce his appointment on their behalf.
Last night's poll, did that have anything to do with this moved up announcement?
No, not at all. It was all to do with when the appointment was finalised by Otago University.
Barbara, how do you plan on tackling the budget? It's a pretty big first test for you. How are you going to put your stamp on it?
Throughout my career, I have dealt with probably over 10 budgets. As some of you may know, I've had a career in the public service. You know, all of it is, a lot of it's formulaic. This is my technical side, but actually for me what I'll be looking out for is where they will be reducing basically the money that's going into everyday New Zealanders' pockets.
I know.
Why don't we leave a couple more questions for Barb, and then I'm happy to come back in.
I know, you know, Chloe Swarbrick, and she stood up for Green Leader. She described herself as a well-researched radical. Do you have some similar label you give yourself?
I want New Zealand to go away from here thinking that I will be thoughtful and considered, and I'll look at all options.
Your tax colleagues have said that you do subscribe a wee bit to the broad-based low-rate orthodoxy of the tax system, and that you do have a focus on some of the compliance issues that have challenged tax policies in the past. Would you say that's a fair description of your sort of thinking around tax and finance?
Well, it's a pretty nice thing. That's what my tax colleague said. But at the same time, people have different perspectives of me, and really I've got to come back to why am I here, what is my job, and basically representing those people that elected me.
Can I just ask what the reaction, your family's reaction
I don't know yet. You know, I am the sole income earner of a family of 10. And I come into this place with a village that supports me and supports my family. So I'm hoping that they probably don't even know that this is happening. This is what this press conference is happening, but I'm sure they'll be pretty happy.
The timing again seems very odd. Like, how did that all play out? Is it because you kind of alluded to it, or you got called out this morning at caucus around?
No, not at all. It was literally a question of when Otago University finalised their appointment process and finished their appointment process.
Hold off announcing until you've organised yourselves, including letting.
Look, it was difficult for me this morning because I knew that we were going to make the announcement this afternoon. So when you were all asking me those questions about that, I wasn't going to bring forward the announcement and do it spontaneously.
You don't have a very good poker face.
Thank you.
In terms of the reshuffle, though, you sort of said this morning, and you said it in your interview with us yesterday, that Labour would have a refreshed lineup and a refreshed platform. You've got one person leaving. Is that the refreshment?
Well, we've actually had 3 people leaving since the beginning of the year. And if you do look at our lineup now and you compare it to the lineup that we had a year ago, it is a very different lineup.
A number of those MPs who are coming in, Shannon Albert, Glenn Bennett, they have been here before, they're not that new.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of our current caucus actually came in 2017 or 2020. It's a relatively new caucus, you know, in terms of parliamentary experience compared to what we might have had previously.
But that intake, if they've come in through 2017 and 2020, have only experienced kind of the highs of the Labour Party. Grant Robertson was a stabilising force in your caucus in recent years. Are you confident that you can hold your caucus together and not deal with those troubles that you saw in the 2014 era?
Yeah, we've got a very, very unified team, and it's a team that's very clearly focused on 2 things. One is holding the government to account for the decisions that they take, because that is actually our job, you know, over the next 3 years, but also getting ourselves into the best position possible to be in government again in less than 3 years now.
It's quite easy to be unified though when you're winning. What about when you're losing?
I've seen no evidence at all, and you know that our team is anything other than unified and disciplined and focused, and I expect that fully to continue.
There has been quite a lot of evidence that maybe it's not so unified. There were a number of leaks at the end of last year.
No, I don't agree with that. This is a very unified and focused team.
You did take a 10-point drop in our preferred Prime Minister poll last night, though. Like, at what point do you need to start worrying about your leadership?
It's actually, if you look at the history of polling, it's very seldom do leaders of the opposition poll ahead of the incumbent Prime Minister. The incumbent Prime Minister's on the news every day doing things. The leader of the opposition is not. It's the nature of the beast. We just come out of the back of an election campaign.
Are you confident your caucus colleagues will see it the same way if you keep dropping?
Certainly.
Grant said after the election that he would stick around to support that transition. It's only been a few months and a large chunk of that has been a summer break. Is he leaving too early? Are you uncomfortable, I guess, about whether the caucus is actually prepared for opposition?
And I think the caucus is in very good shape, and I think that Grant has done a lot of work in the time that he's been here, and I want to acknowledge and thank him for that. But I've also got full confidence in Barb and in the rest of the team that we'll be ready to, to pick up and run with the challenge.
Do you know of anyone else who, or has anyone indicated to you that they don't intend to be here at the next election?
No one else has indicated to me that. I mean, obviously, every time you've asked me that question in the last little while, I've been aware that this was coming. But there is nobody else on the list of people where a retirement may be forthcoming.
And was Megan Woods a consideration for the finance role?
Megan is doing a fantastic job where she is. I looked at the balance of skills across the caucus, and I made the decision that Barb was the best person for the role.
Could we also potentially read into the fact that Megan not being in the finance role is because she doesn't intend to stick around?
Absolutely not.
Why is Barb being put in at 4 instead of 3 like Grant?
It's just a reality of the rankings of the caucus. Megan's doing a fantastic job. She's a senior member of our team. She's got some experience. I want to make sure that we're drawing on that experience. So we run a pretty flat structure in opposition.
Can I just ask you, would you prefer a capital gains tax or a wealth tax?
Again, there's pros and cons to each of them. There will be, lots of different commentators provide the pros and cons for it. Me personally, again, I'm a team player, so you're just going to have to wait,
But capital gains tax, I mean, you do have a personal view, so why don't you just share it?
And again, I'm just not going to go into that for the team's sake.
You're going to start taking the fight to the opposite of the government, tomorrow, I'm guessing, in question time, or possibly through subs today. What is the thing that Nicola Willis is doing right now in finance that you think deserves the most scrutiny, that is the most problematic to you?
All roads lead to Nicola when it comes to money. So the smoke-free repeal, the public service cuts. She made big promises during the election campaign. I believed her numbers didn't add up. A lot of people didn't think her numbers added up. She now has the Treasury benches to help her make those numbers add up. So for me, it's basically to be able to bring to the attention of the New Zealand public what this practically means to them.
Barb, you and Nicola have quite a good relationship. You're pretty friendly. Is that going to make it hard in the house when you go at each other?
We're consummate professionals as well. I have respect for a lot of people across the house.
What are you going to miss most about Grant Robertson?
You're asking me? Look, at a personal level, I miss his friendship. You know, Grant and I have been very close friends for a very long time, and in many of the significant events that have happened in my life outside of work, you know, Grant has been the person, probably one of the people who I've spoken to most about that, so I'll certainly miss him. I'll miss his contribution to our team, of course, but that's the nature of politics. People come and people go, and I'm still got plenty of energy left in me.
He said that when people come to him and ask whether they should go into politics, he issues a health warning alongside it. Would you agree that this is a toxic place?
I wouldn't say it's a toxic place. I'd say it's a place that we need to focus on constantly improving. And I think there have been elements of the workplace culture around here that have been toxic in the past. And I think that there's a lot of things that are changing there. You know, the Debbie Francis report, for example, around the way people in the building, whether you're an MP, a member of the media, a member of staff, are treated, I think that is changing, but there's still more work to be done there. I think in terms of the impact that being a member of Parliament has on the people around you, I think it is, you can never overestimate that it is huge. What our families put up with, what the people who are important to us put up with because of the jobs that we do, is very, very significant. And I think it is the thing that you'll hear people probably most often reflecting on in their valedictory contributions. I don't think that's I think that's the same across the political spectrum. And we should always acknowledge and celebrate the people who allow us to do this. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You're 4 for 4, by the way.
My what?
You got 4 for 4.